I'd like to call this hearing of the Montana Workers' Rights Board open. My name is Frank Kremkowski from Helena. I'm the chair of the Montana Workers' Rights Board, and this is December 6th of 2006. I'm going to introduce the board in just a minute, and we'll each describe our backgrounds, but I'd like to just present the context of what we're here tonight for. On November 29th, the Montana Workers' Rights Board announced that we're going to hold a hearing, which we're holding this evening here in Missoula, to hear testimony and to help resolve a 7-month labor dispute between Hillside Nursing Home here in Missoula and their CNA, dietary, housekeeping, and laundry employees who are members of Unite Here, Local Union 427. As I said, this is Wednesday, December 6th, and we're opening this hearing at this time. The dispute, as we understand it, at least at this point, centers around paying a wage increase called for in the contract between Hillside and the union, and the relationship of that contract issue to a decision and legislation passed in the 2005 Montana legislature, which appropriated money to pay nursing home workers in Montana. This evening's Montana Workers' Rights Board will include myself, Frank Kremkowski from Helena, State Senator Carolyn Squires, Dr. John Brown of Missoula, medical doctor, Missoula City Councilwoman Stacy Rye, Janet Robideau of Montana People's Action and Indian People's Action, Professor Jennifer Considine of the University of Montana Communication Studies Department, and Father Jim Hogan, formerly of Christ the King Parish and retired as a Catholic priest just this May. After hearing testimony from all persons who would like to present some testimony to the board will convene to discuss this among ourselves, all the testimony we have heard, and then we will recommend if we can, and perhaps take action if we can, on ways that would facilitate a just resolution of the dispute that we're hearing testimony about. Before I ask the members of the Montana Workers' Rights Board to say a little bit more about themselves, I want to initially say a little bit more about the Montana Workers' Rights Board. And I'm going to be reading from a mission statement that we put together back in 2001. The Montana Workers' Rights Board was established to support and enhance the democratic rights of working people. The Workers' Rights Board provides the community's moral voice for the economic issues upon which justice for working men and women rests. Existing laws and practices provide very little protection for workers who are treated unfairly or try to organize collectively. Workers need it and have, in the Montana Workers' Rights Board, as well as other means, a community-based alternative to existing institutions like the National Labor Relations Board, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the Human Rights Commission. These alternative community-based organizations help build community support for workers' legal right to organize and bargain collectively. The primary goal of the Workers' Rights Board of Montana, which is like workers' rights boards all across the country, and there are many that are operating all across the country. The primary goal of workers' rights boards is to respond quickly and effectively to incidents where employers abuse the rights of working people. In so doing, we hope to create a climate in which the denial of workers' rights will not be tolerated, and de facto community standards of workplace justice will be created and enforced through broad community pressure. So activities of workers' rights boards, including our own, include investigating complaints from workers regarding unfair treatment, discrimination, and suppression of democratic collective activity, Our activities also include exerting community pressure and moral persuasion to encourage democratic and fair behavior from employers. We develop public statements of principle which foster community support for labor issues, including the right to organize and bargain collectively and workplace justice generally. One of our activities also is raising public awareness of the lack of workers' rights under the law in America and encouraging the strengthening of legal and democratic rights for working people. The Montana Workers' Rights Board, which is convened this evening, began as a project of the Montana Community Labor Alliance, which was Montana's Jobs with Justice chapter, the national organization Jobs with Justice. And members of the Workers' Rights Board in Montana, of which we are just a small portion, include leaders from the civic, legal, academic, and religious communities. Our authority is not based in some sort of legal mandate that we have from a legislature or from Congress, but from the experience that we have as community leaders with experience in these issues and with commitment to assure that workers' rights are in fact defended effectively. This hearing tonight by the Workers' Rights Board does not prejudice or preclude any particular determination. We're committed to truth and resolving these issues justly and fairly after hearing all testimony, if it's at all possible for us to do so. That's the background of the Montana Workers' Rights Board. We have had hearings in the past, and we have taken action. Here in Missoula, a few years ago, we held a hearing at the request of the Police Association of Missoula. We're trying to resolve a 14-month contract dispute with the city of Missoula. The issue there was the question of whether or not the city and the police union, the police association, would use binding arbitration as the preferred and actual method of resolving disputes. 2 weeks after our hearing, the city and the union actually did agree to that. So it was a very happy resolution for all the parties involved. We also held hearings at other places across Montana, including up in Kalispell concerning a facility up in Whitefish. And one of our actions at that time, because of the egregious violations of workers' rights in Whitefish, was to call for a national economic boycott of that particular hotel facility. What will come out of this evening's hearing is not prejudiced, except that we're looking for the truth and we're looking for justice, by which we mean fairness. I'd like each of the members of this evening's board to introduce themselves, starting with Stacy Rye, and to tell us a little bit about their background, and then I'll explain more of the process for this evening's hearing in terms of how we will accept testimony. Stacy?
My name is Stacy Rye. I sit on the Missoula City Council. I've been there for 3 years. One of the things we do there is approve several unions' contracts and what they've negotiated, such as the fire, the police, the wastewater treatment plant, and the parks, because all of those different folks have unions, and I'm sure I'm probably leaving one out. I also sit on the council representative to the Employee Benefits Committee, which helps negotiate the benefits that this almost 500 city employees get every year, which is ultimately approved or denied by council. Before that, I worked for a nonprofit for 5 years. I was the director of a local nonprofit, and I oversaw 5 employees and implemented the policies and procedures, the personnel policies and procedures that the board of directors told me to implement. So I have a little bit of experience both ways, I think, and I was responsible to the board of directors, which meant I had to negotiate my own benefits as well. So I'm glad I'm here, and thank you for having this.
Thank you.
My name is John Brown. I'm a retired physician, practiced internal medicine in New York City for many years. I'm a emeritus clinical associate professor of medicine at Cornell. I was active in the university when I was full-time, or when I was on the faculty. I was on the board of directors of the AIDS Project of Northwestern Connecticut before moving to Missoula. I'm a member of the University Congregational Church, and through that, a member of the Justice and Witness Committee. I have been involved in setting up a mentoring program for Native American students at the university. Hasn't come to fruition yet, but we're still working on it. And I met Mark Anderlich through that, and have been sitting in on some of the meetings of the Central Labor Council, mainly in terms of universal health care, but also minimum wage.
I'm Jennifer Constein. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Montana. I have a PhD in communication from Texas A&M University. My research specialty is in organizational communication, particularly within health and human service organizations. Since moving here, I am also a member of University Congregational Church, and I was the co-chair of a recent Rally for the Raise that was put together by Many Face, One Voice, which was an interfaith coalition that was formed to address issues of economic justice.
And I'm Frank Krumkowski from Helena. I currently work for the Department of Commerce in the Community Development Block Grant Program, and I've worked there for 7 years. I'm not representing the Department of Commerce this evening, obviously. But for the last 7 years, I have worked in that program, evaluating and reviewing grant applications for federal funds that fund programs that develop most critical and fund most critical human needs in the areas of both public facilities, including water, wastewater facilities, and Head Start centers, child care centers, these kinds of things. I've been doing that for the last 7 years. Prior to that, for the 20 years prior to that, I served also working for the state of Montana, working in the Department of Public Health and Human Services and its earlier incarnations, Department of Family Services and Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services, either managing or evaluating programs in every area of human services, from aging services to child care, foster care, child protective services. I also served for 5 years as a hearing examiner, hearing contested cases, serving as a judge to decide cases of people complaining about some action taken by the department, whether it would be revoking a foster care license or a daycare license or some other issue. And then for 10 years before that, I taught philosophy, humanities, and environmental studies at Carroll College, at the University of Notre Dame, and at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania.
My name is Jim Hogan. I am a Catholic priest and have been for 45 years. Of those years, and I'm a native-born Montanan, of those years I've served in parishes in Butte, Helena, Browning, and 37 of those years in 3 different parishes here in Missoula. During that time, I was the founding pastor of a parish on the south side called Holy Family. And during that period, I was at least once a month in the Hillside Nursing Facility, more often than that usually. So I'm very familiar with that. And as most parish priests, my life has been filled with tremendous diversity and all kinds of things that I'm sure you don't want to hear about. I'm now in senior status, and I have a whole new kind of activity unfolding in my life.
And I'm Janet Robidoux. I'm the current executive director of Montana People's Action and Indian People's Action. Through Montana People's Action, we have the state's largest grassroots group. And in Indian People's Action, we organize urban Indians in Missoula, Billings, Butte, and Helena. In Montana People's Action, we're also a statewide organization with our offices in Missoula and Billings. And I will also say that I'm honored to say that I am a former certified nursing assistant who worked at Hillside. When I completed my college degree, the only job I was able to get was at Hillside. And I worked at Hillside and then worked over at Riverside. So I speak from experience when I talk about the CNA experience.
I'm Carolyn Squires, and I'm a state senator from Senate District 48 here in Missoula, and Hillside Manor, I believe, is in, or I know is in my district. And I consider myself a trade unionist, and that's my concern here. I worked at Missoula Community Hospital for 32 years. I'm currently retired, so I represent nobody but myself. But I worked there for 32 years as a licensed practical nurse. And the last 5 years of my employment, I worked as a job training counselor. About 25 years ago, the RNs and the LPNs and some of the ancillary people went out on strike at Community Hospital, and that strike lasted for over 8.5 months. Nobody lost their home, nobody was evicted. We were able to maintain food and necessities in life, and it would have been wonderful if we would have had a program such as this with which to deal with the issues of trying to get the hospital at that time to the table. So I consider myself a wife, or a mother, a wife, a trade unionist, and a Democrat. Thank you.
I want to thank all the members of the board for sharing a bit of their background and experience, and thank you for being here tonight. It's also important for me to reiterate that although we are clearly committed to defending and not tolerating injustices against workers, we're here this evening, as in every occasion or manifestation of the Workers' Rights Board in Montana, to hear truthful testimony, to ask questions, to try to critically evaluate what we do here, and to try to reach some sort of position and recommendation that will find a just and amenable solution to all the parties. This evening, we're going to invite testimony from all persons who would like to speak, and then board members, Montana Workers' Rights Board members, will, if the occasion arises, ask questions of the testifiers, to ask for clarifications or additional information that they didn't hear come out in testimony. I want to indicate as well that we are open to testimony from all parties, and I did send a letter of invitation to Mr. Adam Melinda, who's the administrator for Hillside Manor Nursing Home, inviting him to testify, and send anyone that he would like to send to bring the perspective of the management of Hillside Manor and its owners to this hearing, and explain that it's my own commitment as the chair of this board to work in the spirit of an organization that I belonged to since 1965, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, FOR. I'm also a National Council member of the FOR, which is the oldest interfaith religious peace organization in the United States, founded in 1914. And I'm a member of the council. I'm not representing them tonight, but I am committed to the position which I've held since 1965 when I became a member. And I'd just like to reiterate that, to reassure every party from whatever perspective that in the spirit of the FOR, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, we're people who have joined together to explore the power of love and truth for resolving human conflict. We're committed to avoid bitterness and contention in dealing with controversy, to maintain the spirit of self-giving and love in our search for truth. But we do want truth and we do want justice. So, with that as a background for this evening's hearing, I'd like to just see a show of hands for people who would like to testify and who plan to testify this evening. I see at least 4 hands. That you don't raise your hand at this moment doesn't mean you can't testify later or decide to testify later. We want to get as deep into the issues as possible concerning the dispute concerning the difference between what workers in the union believe and what management believe. And so we ask you to address your testimony to throw light on whichever aspect of that controversy you believe you have some important information to share with us. So, I'd like to call upon representatives of the union to bring forth their testimony at first, so that we can have a beginning of this hearing. There are various ways to begin hearings, but persons who feel that they're aggrieved and have some issues that they want this hearing for are the ones we'd like to hear first. So we'd like you to come forward to identify yourself by name and to also tell us as much about your background and why you're here to testify, and then just to present your testimony.
My name's Carrie Hoffman. I'm a CNA at Hillside Healthcare Center, and I've been a CNA for coming up on 16 years in January next month. I'm also a union shop steward at Hillside, and I'm also the president of Unite Here Local 427. Back in April of 2004, we started our contract negotiations. We met at the fire station number 3 down on Russell and 39th Street, and we sat across the table with the Sage Corporation. Helen Woolley was the administrator back then. We negotiated our contract, and we came up with wage rate increases for all the job classifications. And we were really happy that we got the contract we did this last, in April of '04, because in the past, Hillside, on our wage increases, we would get anywhere from 10 cents to 25 cents per year as an increase, a cost of living increase. So we really stuck together and worked hard on this, and our increases were 45 cents for the first year, 35 to 40 cents increases for each of the next 5 years, which meant an increase of 4.5 to 7% increase for everyone on that first year. We was also able to negotiate shift differential pay, which is the first time we've gotten it. We've brought it to the table in the past, and this is in '04 was the first year that we was able to get the shift differential, which was for evening shift was 10 cents per hour more, and 20 cents per hour for the night shift, which is the 11 to 7 a.m. So it was a significant increase in the starting pay for all the job classifications. We also negotiated the ability of the union to renegotiate the wages after the 4th year, so that's coming up here soon. And we got our raises each year, to start with the 45 cents, then it went to 40 cents, and then supposed to get 35 in May of 1st of '06. But just before that, with the help of the legislatures, they provided money that gave increases and for all direct caregivers throughout Montana in all the nursing homes and stuff. And at Hillside, we went to the table and negotiated. The CNAs had a 78 cents per hour raise, and housekeepers, dietary, and laundry workers received 50 cents per raise. But before we came to that agreement, they wanted to put a lot of that money into uniforms that a lot of the workers bought for themselves at other places besides the facility. They wanted to put it into, like, let's have pizza some Friday or something like that. So we really stuck to our guns and sat at the table with them and finally came up with the 78 cents and the 50 cents for all the other direct caregivers. So we was really happy about that because they were only going to give 15 cents and lower, so we kept an eye on that. Then that was with our when we didn't get our wage increase this last year in May of 1st of 2006, the facility says, well, you got this big raise last year in '05, so that covers this one in '06. And we're like, no, that's separate, because we contracted the raise for '06 in our union contract. They agreed upon it, and now they're trying to back out of it. So we've done button-ups, we've wore buttons at work with our union pins, asking where's our raise. We've had a rally last June, which was really successful. A lot of people from the community showed up, a lot of workers showed up, and one of Hillside's management representatives was there also. So as we were walking to the rally, because a lot of us were just getting off of work, and this Hillside management rep was walking to the rally among us, and one of the workers jokingly asked him if he was going to join us. And he replied, no, this is bad publicity, and it's going to harm our residents. And I replied back, I said, no, this is good publicity. It shows that Sage Corporation doesn't honor our wage raises. Nothing else was said right then, and we continued to the rally. At the rally, the Hillside representative was taking pictures of everyone and of our posters. He also wore a sign clipped to his jacket that said, "Put our residents first." Well, on the way home, that sign really stuck in my head. You know, isn't that what I've been doing for the past 16 years at work? Despite the low wages and the short staffing, that is an ongoing problem in our type of work. Put our residents first? Have I not been putting our residents first when I go to work each day and help them get dressed and try to make sure they get enough to eat and drink? Take an extra minute or two to reassure them that they are important and that they are loved and cared about, despite the fact that some of them no longer have any relatives that are still alive or close enough to come and visit. To hold them, comfort them, and care for them as if they were my own grandparents when they are passing away. Give them hugs and kiss their cheeks to show them that they are loved and cared about. Laugh with them when they are happy and comfort them when they are sad or in pain. You know, put our residents first. I also think about the reports that I have read in the newspapers. OSHA says that our job is the third highest for work-related injuries. First is construction workers, and second is manufacturing plants. As being one that was seriously hurt on the job, I know that accidents can happen even when you're doing things the right way. I came back to work. Why? Well, I thought a lot about that. I thought of the residents. I thought of the good way I feel inside when I can make their days a little brighter by just helping them with everyday things that most people take for granted. I am proud to be a CNA and take care of our nation's elderly. Not every day at work goes real smooth, as we deal with short staffing a lot. Not everyone can be a CNA. It's a very stressful job at times. But to me, the good days overrule the not so good days. Put our residents first. Does that mean I'm being selfish to ask for a 35-cent raise that's in my union contract? That may be the only raise I get until May of 2007. Only 35 cents. That's about $14 a week. Then there's those taxes, so then it will be less than that to bring home. The cost of living has going up. Gas is already $3 per gallon. It has gone down a little. My daughter's growing. She needs clothing, school supplies, not to mention the food to eat, rent, phone bill, heating. You know, the list really does go on. Then I think of the other workers with children at Hillside. Some of them have more than one child. More than half of the workers with children at Hillside are on some kind of public assistance because our wages are so low. Even after working at Hillside for close to 16 years, most people think I make pretty good money. Guess what? I receive public assistance to help give my daughter a decent place to live. So apparently I'm not at Hillside for the money. It really upsets me that Hillside management thinks that I'm not putting the residents first by asking for a contracted raise of 35 cents so that I can shelter, clothe, and feed my own child as the cost of living skyrockets. Put our residents first. What do they mean by that? Does it mean we have to continue to tell our children, maybe next month we can get you a new pair of shoes or pants, even though they have holes in them or their toes are to the end, because we need food to eat, or the rent bill needs to be paid? What do they mean by that? Well, this is what I'm taking it to mean. We need to stand together and fight for our contracted raise that they agreed upon in 2004. And I know I'm not the only one who agrees with that. Our wages are really low, and also the Montana State Legislature has said that they are low. And they have tried to help us by passing the wage add-on program. So we are standing together and we're asking Hillside to give us our contracted wage raises. Those are my thoughts, opinions, and my heart.
Before I just want to ask if any of the board members would like to ask some questions at this time, or would like to...
I had a couple questions. Ms. Hoffman, you began explaining how the contracted raise works from 35 to 45 cents over the next several years, starting in 2004. And then while I was writing something down, I missed something about 78 cents.
Okay, that was the 78 cents was what the Montana State Legislature, that was the wage add-on. That was, right, that wasn't in our contract, that came through the legislature to the facilities for the direct caregivers only. And it was, if you read the things that, specifically said for the direct caregivers. And it had nothing to do with our contracted wage raises.
But the administration says it does?
The administration is saying that it does. They said that they can pay it out to us any way they wanted to. Like at first, before we agreed on the 78 cents, they wanted to put it into uniforms. They wanted to put it into pizza parties and different things like that. And we said, no, this is for the direct caregivers. That's pizza parties wasn't the intent of the legislature. So we got them, negotiated
So
with
they're saying
them.
the 78 cents takes the place of your
The contracted,
negotiated
yeah.
contract.
Yeah.
So your contract has not been implemented this year?
No, we have not received our 35-cent raise.
And what about next year?
Next
Has
year,
there
I'm
been
hoping
any
we do.
indication about that?
No, that's, we're fighting for our 35-cent raise for '06, and it is in our contract to get a 35-cent raise in May 1st of '07.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the board at this time? We may have some more questions, but thank you.
That's fine.
I'm Candace. I've worked up at Hillside for 1.5 years now. Previously, I worked up there for 1 year. Our residents hunger for social activities or just to have a hand to hold, but we are so short-staffed up there that we don't have the time to spend with them. You feed two to three people at a time, running back and forth. When they want to go to bed go back to their rooms, we can't take them back there. The other day we had six CNAs there for the whole building, which makes it really frustrating for us because we can't take care of them and comfort them if they needed it. And I am the bath aide when I can be, which means then they're supposed to get 2 baths a week. But lately, I've been a bath aide once a week, and they're lucky if they get one every 2 weeks, because we just don't have enough staff to give them their showers. And we try and get caught up, but you never do with that. I and a lot of other aides have worked South Hall, which is about 25 residents on that, would you say? And we worked that one person. There's 3 Hoyer lifts on there and 1 easy stand lift on that hall alone for us to do. The other day we had 2 aides for about 32 residents, and several of them were Hoyers and stuff like that. We had to get people in wheelchairs. We couldn't do that either. Very good. I'm a single mom raising a 3-year-old, and I try to at least work 50 hours a week up there, and I still don't make enough to make barely pay rent and buy food for the house. I'm on assistance right now. I have to pay daycare costs. I don't think we're asking too much, just for a little more money to kind of help us out a little bit for the hard work we do, because it is hard on our bodies, and it's not always easy working with people. They get demanding and they need things, and you can't do that for them. Then they get frustrated at you, and it does make it hard for us. I can't think of anything else to say.
Are you also part of, you've worked there just for 1 year, okay? So you weren't part of the original negotiations on this contract?
No, I worked there in '97, and then I came back, and I've been now there for 1.5 years again.
I have a question about, we have been given a copy of the contract document, and I see that there is a reference to a 35-cent increase that was supposed to occur as of May 1st. Just to get clear in my mind as to what happened. There was talk about a 78-cent increase and a 58 for direct care workers and a 50-cent an hour increase for other workers. But in reality, what actually happened? You didn't get 78 cents. Or what did you get?
The 78 cents came from the Montana State Legislature.
Okay, so you did get that.
That was above and beyond our, contract. It didn't have anything to do with our contracted wage raises. it had, the 2005 legislature had met and, had seen how low across the state direct caregiver wages were, and put together this wage add-on program to pay out to the facilities depending on their Medicaid, Medicare hours. I think that's how it worked. And we did, Hillside was one of the facilities that got, each facility got a different amount. Hillside got quite a large amount based on their hours. And the CNAs, all the direct caregivers from the CNAs up to the LPNs and the RNs got 78-cent raise. Then our other support staff, which also figures into direct care as far as the residents go, got 50 cents. And that was in July of '05.
Did you get an explanation for why the 35 cents that's in the contract was not paid? I thought I heard you say, they were saying that this 78 cents actually covers that, so forget the 35 cents as an additional thing?
Basically, that's what they said. What they had told us is, because we got the 78-cent raise, which was supposed to figure from, I think it went from like June until July of the next year, that they were going to include, when it came close to May 1st, where our 35 cents was due, our contracted raise, they sent us a letter saying, we are deducting this amount from the wage add-on and adding on what is supposed to be your 35-cent raise. So basically, we didn't get anything at all. It came out to zero amount. We said, no, you can't do that. You can't take away our wages that we already have. And, in the contract, you agreed to pay us 35 cents May 1st. And they said, no, because you had this, big raise last year, so this is what we're doing, and we can do it.
Does the union have a lawyer who tried to work with Hillside managers
Yes,
to explain that you think you're legally entitled to this, and that they're wrong in their understanding of both the contract, or what the contract requires, and what the state law requires?
Yes, we've done our button-ups through the year. We've also did rallies and stuff, and filed a grievance on it, and right now it is in arbitration. We do have an attorney, a labor law attorney, that is working with us to get the 35 cents back.
I have a question.
Do you have a question? Yeah. Oh, Stacy.
Who pays for your attorney?
Local 427.
Depending on the outcome of the attorneys, who pays ultimately for the attorneys? If it's decided in arbitration or otherwise, does the prevailing side get their attorney paid for?
No, in our contract, it states if we do go to arbitration, that the cost of the arbitrator will be split 50-50 between Hillside and the union.
But that's the arbitrator. What about the attorney?
We pay our own attorney.
Yeah, the union.
There's no penalty here.
We took it to the board of Unite Here Local 427 and explained what was going on at Hillside, and the board agreed to pay for an attorney to help support Hillside.
I'm looking at an April 27th document that says, it's entitled, Dear Direct Caregiver Staff. It has a series of formulas. Is there going to be someone who will maybe explain that in a little more detail, or is that... Because I gather from what you just said a while ago that in spite of the fact that it looks like you got 78 cents, but the chart that you got here just
Right.
before the May 1st indicated that
Right, this is the letter
there's
they sent
subtractions
us.
as well as additions.
Right, this is the letter they sent us just before May 1st, when our contract was scheduled to, our contracted wage was due. Just before May 1st, they sent this letter out. And this is their formula they used, which was like at first really confusing. So what they're showing for the current CNAs, which is what they did with my wages, they subtracted 43 cents off of my current wage. Then they added 35 cents plus 8 cents, and that would be my new rate. Well, if you do that to $10.63, you come up with $10.63. So where's my 35 cents?
So yeah, that's what I was thinking. It looks like
Yeah,
that first formula adds up to 0, minus 43 plus 43.
yeah.
New rate equals same as the old rate.
And this is the letter they gave us, and this is basically was that they were telling us that they could do this. That and if you go through all of them, all of them come up to be 0. So basically, we did not get our raise. So the raise from our contract that we negotiated. So we wrote back to them and explained to them that they couldn't do that. They had agreed in the union contract that they would pay 35 cents, and that they said they were in compliance with the state guidelines, and that if necessary, they would make adjustments. But so far, they haven't given us any other reason but sticking to this here, saying that they are, conforming to the guidelines. And in our contract, it has where they can't take away our current wages. It's in our contract. They can't like next month we're taking away 50 cents because our census are low or something like that. Our contract is the minimum wages that we receive. Hillside, if they so deem, they can pay their workers more money, above and beyond the contract. There's nothing that's stopping them there.
Father Hogan has a question.
Carrie, a couple of questions. I'm a little confused. On the chart behind you, it says 75 cents an hour, and I keep hearing 78.
That's kind of what we thought it was going to be. We kind of just
So
averaged
78.
it out. We did get 78
Then
cents,
what about the
but that was
26
an
cents an hour in
average.
benefits? What, is that in addition to the 75 cents, 78? It says 26 cents an hour in benefits.
Yes, some of it was put like for the, I think you guys have a copy of it, where it goes into, sorry, your folder.
Well, what I'm really wondering is if the state legislature's intent was observed, you would have received a 78 cents an hour increase, and for benefits, a 26 cent an hour increase.
Right.
Okay. Well, to me, what the simplicity of this, all this lawyer's conversation and facts and figures, I find very confusing. So, to try and make my head clear, if your contract had been respected and the intent of the state legislature honored, it sounds to me you should have received $1.10 increase per hour. That would have done it. The
Can't make
35
the
cent in the
35
contract,
cents.
$1.13, I guess. 78 cents from the state, 35 cents from the employer. That'd be $1.13 per hour. Plus then the benefit package would be improved. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what they're saying is they would give you the 78 cents, but not the 35 cents.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And just to go one step further, the reason they won't give you 35 cents is that they believe somehow that you don't understand the state law in this requirement.
I'm thinking that's what,
Okay,
in my
so-
opinion, I'm thinking that's what
So
they're
that
thinking.
they're saying that, it looks from the face of it that the state law says you should get both of these. I mean, state law, it is law that you should follow contracts.
Yeah.
And it's also state law that in this case, you're supposed to get 75 cents an hour in salary increase, or 78 cents, whichever the exact figure, plus some additional benefits. But they're saying that that's not what state law really required. We're meeting state law, and they would be saying you don't understand state law. The
Right.
union doesn't understand state law. Did they cite some kind of opinion from someone with the state of Montana that would clarify the opinion? I mean, in lots of cases, someone would call someone up and say, you're the officer in charge of the direct care worker increase that was passed by the legislature. They say this 35 cents is covered in the 78 cents. Can you give me an interpretation? Did anyone ever give you or give anybody an interpretation that you're aware of that question?
Yeah, the letter from their attorney makes no reference to the legislative act. It just goes through all these facts and figures and says, therefore you don't get, but it doesn't give any rationale. At least this letter that is in front of us from the attorney gives no rationale for their decision. That's what I see anyway.
Yeah.
There is another letter that Jennifer was referring to that seems to indicate that somebody has been given some kind of opinion. This is the May 8th letter from Adam Melinda, Executive Director of Hillside, to direct caregiver staff. And it said that the Hillside Healthcare Center direct caregiver increase plan was submitted and approved by the state of Montana. During the approval process, Rick Noreen, Bureau Chief, was contacted and stated that any raise given between the periods of July 1st, 2005 to June 30th, 2006 could be counted as part of the direct care giver increase. For the calendar year of 2005, the direct care giver staff received 2 wage increases. Recently as well, I personally called the state of Montana confirming that Hillside is in compliance with the state guidelines. We will conduct an audit to make sure the employer is doing everything right. It sounds like, has anyone ever contacted Rick Noreen to see if this is an accurate portrayal of what?
Yes.
Because people call the state of Montana all the time, and then you find out that they don't understand necessarily what the answer was that they got over the phone. And so, if Rick Noreen has ever communicated this to the union, that yes, they're right, and you're wrong.
No, he didn't come out and say that. He just couldn't believe that, he said, this has nothing to do with the workers' contract and stuff. It's a wage add-on that the state legislatures passed through, It has nothing to do with your contract. You know, if you're contracted whatever amount, then that's between you and your employee. This was added on for all the direct caregivers across the state because the wages are so low. And so,
Who said that?
Nick Noreen,
To the union?
yeah, Mark, who is our representative and organizer, was in contact with Rick at the time.
Do you have that in writing?
We do. Do you have the letters from that?
He didn't write any letters, so it's not in writing, but
Mark could answer your questions on that.
perhaps Greg Lynn is going to come after some of these questions.
I'm just having a hard time with the math here. Because it appears to me, if you were supposed to get 78 cents as a result of this, then you were supposed to get 35 cents May of 2005 and May of 2006, correct? According to the contract?
Yeah, in our contract, we the first year of 2004, when the contract went through, we got a 45-cent raise.
Okay, so this chart does not show this at all. This chart shows the new hired after these effective dates, not existing employees, I don't think.
This,
So it doesn't reflect the 35 cents, but I'll take your word for it that that was part of the
Yeah.
contract as well.
These ones that are in the book, they're before the 78 cents. They're before the wage add-on came through. These are the original contracted wage increases.
What's 35 cents?
Yeah,
For existing.
right.
Okay, 35 cents a year, approximately.
Yeah.
35 to 45 cents a year.
Yeah, it was.
Approximately 2004, 2005, 2006, so on and so forth. 2004's was given, 2005 was given, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then they're claiming that the 78 cents was given as well?
Yeah, we got the wage add-on in July of '05.
So on the Hillside Healthcare Center, this one, on their letterhead, down here, Carrie, the third bold line says hired after June 30th, 2005. And it says minus 62 cents, plus 35 cents, plus 28 cents. Can you help me, what's the logic behind this? Minus 63 cents, why is there minus 63 cents?
You know, when I got this letter, I was just as stumped as you, and mine is because when they figured out that is like, CNA's hired before June 30th.
But you were given the 78 cents.
We was. So then they went back in April of '06 and said, they're like counting that whole year in from when we got the
Oh, I
wage
see.
add-on.
So you were given.
That's what they're doing.
Okay. So
you
you were
know.
given 35 cents in May of '05. You were given 78 cents when this went into effect, presumably, it says the biennium, so I'm thinking July of '05.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following May, 7 months ago, they said you got 2 raises last fiscal year, so here's the new formula.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Well, we may have a few more questions that we could ask of you, so will we be able to be here for
Yeah.
more of the hearing? Okay. We have some witnesses who may have to leave earlier, so. And one of the key issues that has come up already is different understandings of what the state law is different understandings of what Mr. Noreen is
Yeah.
saying to the different parties. So I want to thank you for testifying, and then we may have some more questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Greg Lind. I have the privilege of representing Senate District 50, which is contained within Missoula County. I also had the pleasure and privilege of serving on the joint Health and Human Services Appropriations Subcommittee of the 2005 legislature, my first session. And I am not an attorney. I would like to testify fairly narrowly on the legislative process as I recall it and have been able to research and reconstruct, and the intent of our discussions when we went through this. It's quite a process. This particular direct care wage benefit was, I have to give credit where credit is due, Senator John Cobb, Senator from Augusta, who Senator Squires and I served with. This was his idea. We had a few brainstorming ideas in the subcommittee and wanted to do some things for folks that haven't had the benefits of legislative assistance for several sessions. And John came up with the idea of providing a wage add-on to benefit particularly the folks at the lower end of the wage spectrum. And he targeted this, and we agreed to direct it toward direct care workers and provided $1 total per hour benefit, salary plus benefits of $1 per hour, with the goal of providing assistance to folks at the lower end of the wage spectrum, making it easier to recruit and retain qualified individuals that are taking care of our family members and will be taking care of us in the future. It is hard work, and this wasn't a large special interest group, as they say, clamoring for funding, but John came up with this idea. We incorporated it as an amendment into the subcommittee's budget, which deals with Health and Human Services, the Department of Public Health and Human Services. It was incorporated into House Bill 2, the budget bill, and survived intact through the process. I did not think of, John probably did, or perhaps Senator Squires with more experience thought of these sort of unforeseen problems. We thought we were, and I think I'm speaking for the subcommittee since I believe it was unanimous to add this amendment. It was several things were on there, shifting money for TANF funding, foster care, a variety of other programs. Funding was increased, and this was a global amendment on the last day of our subcommittee. My understanding, and folks on the subcommittee that I've spoken with, thought this was going to be added on to whatever wage structure was out there, and this was going to be revenue neutral for the employer. This is to be a pass-through. And that is clearly my understanding. I've had several conversations with Mr. Noreen, Kelly Williamson, the Senior Long-Term Care Division Head. I've also spoken at the beginning of the summer with Ms. Hash at Hillside and their attorney, and I don't have a whole lot to add there except my recent conversations with Ms. Williamson are that, in my understanding of the audit that occurred, was that they have a certain lens at which they can look through this and certain metrics they can apply to see that in the way the rules are written, to look for compliance. This is a voluntary program. The institutions can opt in or not opt in. They've opted in. And according to a conversation, nothing written today, was that the audit shows by looking at hours and average wages and the timing, the things that they're allowed to look at, that the institution is in compliance. I first heard about this issue last year, and it certainly was not consistent, this interpretation, with my recollection of the intent of what we were trying to do. This was supposed to be, something following at the direction of the committee, tax dollars from Montanans to help this segment of the workforce.
Mark, thanks, that's really helpful to me. And if I heard you correctly, this was not to supplement the employer's expenses.
My vision, I can speak most clearly for that, but the idea was that this was going to be crafted as an add-on, and in fact, in the rules of the administrative rules as written, it's called an add-on payment. And I think that term is consistent with the way that we in the subcommittee viewed this, that this was not to supplant or replace existing wages or raises. In fact, to be honest, I will think about this in the future. I'll be on that subcommittee again, but I certainly did not think through this possibility at the time, I'll have to admit.
I don't know whether you track this, but does anyone else in Montana have this problem? How many nursing homes are covered by this?
I don't know the total number of nursing homes. I have a discussion as of this afternoon that this is, to the division administrator, this is a unique interpretation.
No one else has done this?
Correct, to her knowledge.
And the sticking point is this Rick Noreen and his comments by phone and not on paper, that this, what they were doing was adequate.
I'm going to speak a little, this is sort of opinion. They feel that what the sense I get, and again, telephone conversations, nothing written, is that they can't go in and examine every contract, every pay scale in the state, and they have some metrics that facts that reports. First of all, the program has to be applied for by the institution to the state, and then they have to comply, and there's an audit process, and by the audit process, looking at, and I am not a CPA either, average hourly wages, average benefits, FTEs, and such, that they are in compliance with taking the add-on benefit and having a commensurate increase in pay that is sustained over time. So my interpretation of what they're telling me is that they have only that one way to look at this issue from the state, and that they're telling me that they are technically in compliance, but they cannot look at the other issues. And I can speak for the other issues. Is my understanding that this was to be an add-on to existing pay schedules and schemes, and I honestly, it was a learning process, and I'll know to ask in detail intent more clearly in the future.
Well, I want to agree with Senator Lynn in the respect of the discussion I believe that was on the floor, because this was significant enough to come to the floor and have the discussion as well as in the committee. When we did House Bill 2, which is the big budget bill, it was significant enough to be discussed out on the floor, because it did appear to be a bigger bump than normally what occurs. And I don't think there was a soul in there that objected to the fact that these caregivers were going to receive this particular amount of money. In fact, I think everybody felt very good about themselves as they went through the process, if I remember correctly, thinking we were able to do this, because I've been in sessions before when they've got a dime for God only knows what. But anyhow, and their pay increases are never, this is probably the first one that the legislature has done for these particular providers, and I don't know how long. I mean, it's ridiculous what we've done to these folks in regards to the pay. So I'm assuming, and you know what happens then when you assume, that everybody understood that this was to go in that manner to these folks in the amount of 78 cents. And not to supersede, exclude, whatever the words may be in regards to what they had negotiated. This was, you have been good, faithful servants, and this is what the state will provide for you at this time. Now, if words weren't put down to that nature, I mean, that may be an issue. But Greg, I've talked to him also back when, but the audit part of it is what drives me crazy, because I can't remember exactly. Do they get a certain amount that they need to send back to the state, and then it passes back through again? Is that how that goes? Or I may have that mixed up with something else that happened with Health and Human Services, but the audit, I don't, because they kept saying to me last summer too, they were in compliance. They were always in compliance, but I could never figure out how they could be in compliance when the wages weren't there.
Again, my impression of what the department is saying, the division is saying, is that that Hillside has decided to participate. They're taking the, they talk about additional amount of wage and benefit increases for direct care workers, taking that money and then, looking at the starting average wage and then the increased wage and then the increased wage they talk about having it sustained over a period of time, so they don't just take it and then take it back. That's the test that they've met. And it seems to me, I'm going to go opinion here, and again, that if indeed, and I'm not stipulating that they have met the letter of the law, but it seems that certainly the intent has been circumvented. You have someone's wages that are doing this, and this was supposed to step up $1 in the package and track that. At least that's clearly the way we interpreted that. And the alternative, they don't, I guess, need to participate. It is a voluntary program, but it's more than a little frustrating to me that tried to reach out and do something positive, and I think by most people's estimation, and then we seem to be arguing about the definition of, well, I won't go there, but it's certainly not the spirit in my understanding. I don't understand this. People have explained this to me, the letter of from Mr. Bender of April 25th, 2006. Do you have that one? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it seems to me that they've reduced the wages back to contract minimums and then given the add-on to take the money from the state and then used it to supplant contracted increases. That's my understanding.
Does this sound correct, what I'm trying to say? There's no question about Hillside being honest with the state funds. that the audit verifies they received the money, they dispersed the money. It sounds to me like the question is, have they observed their contract? So they received the money, they gave the increase, and then they say, forget the contract, that's been taken care of by the increase.
That's the way I look at it. I don't see them to be any way that they can be in compliance with both. But again, I'm not an attorney, but I just don't see how both could be. They can be construed to be following both. But that's my opinion.
You also mentioned, you said Kelly Williamson said this is a unique interpretation. Was she referring to Hillside's understanding of how this applies? Or was she- if you could clarify that.
I asked specifically, was she aware of any other institutions in the state of Montana that were interpreting the legislative provisions in this manner? And she said no.
I have a question. Have you talked to Rick Marine?
Yes.
And did he say any raise given between could be counted as a direct caregiver increase
He,
as part of the direct caregiver increase?
This conversation was quite a while ago. My recollection of that part was that he, I don't think he would fully agree with that. Him being quoted that way, he was asked several times, he said overtime from early on last year through the process, can we do it this way, can we do it this way, can we do it this way? And he told me that several things that were asked, and I cannot remember the specifics, which would probably be important, but that there were many attempts to work this into existing pay structure. And that, again, all I can speak from most strongly is the intent.
And so is he the final person that decides intent if the legislature isn't in session?
He is under Kelly Williamson, who's the division administrator. I apologize if I'm getting her title wrong.
She's the division administrator for senior and long-term care.
Correct.
And he's the bureau chief of Medicare program?
Nursing homes.
In
Those
other
were,
words, who's the final, who gives the final say? Who gets to say the intent was not this? You do what, to say to Hillside Manor, your contract is a different animal altogether, but you cannot call the 75, 78 cents part of, you can't use that as part of your existing contract. This is simply an add-on to your existing contract.
I repeatedly got the same response that they can, their tools are to do the audit, in someone taking the add-on, look at the wages, make sure they've increased, and make sure they're still increased over time. That's what they're telling me, their limit that they can do. I have asked Ms. Williamson I said, who should I talk to about clarifying legislation for the upcoming session? She said, I guess that's me. So we're going to be pursuing that to take any ambiguity out of this. I will be. But I didn't get the sense that there was much to be further avenues. I got the line that we can't talk about the union contract, we can't talk about that. They've taken the money, wages have stepped up, and they're still up.
What would it have been legal for Hillside Manor if the union employees had said, okay, use it for pizza parties and uniforms? Would it have been legal for Hillside Manor to take that 78 cents and use it for those things?
I certainly wouldn't think so, but again, I'm not an attorney. That wasn't the intent of what we were trying to do. That's pretty clear, and I think that would not have gone far in the legislature.
That's correct. I mean, if we would have put that directly towards wages, of which everybody anticipated, and we hear about pizza parties and so on, uniforms, I mean, I've worked in the nursing profession, and I always had to buy my uniforms, you know, and I never got to buy them at the facility. You know, I don't understand that, but I mean, I'll let that go because it's not something I'm aware of, but seems like you have an awful captive audience there. If you force them to buy them at the facility.
This was truly, I just have to say one more time, born out of, agreement by the subcommittee, but Senator Cobb's idea that of always trying to find something to do to folks to help at the bottom end, to bring, and a lot of folks in this area of employment don't have health insurance, and we kicked around ways to try, and we couldn't get there. Health insurance for all health workers, that may be coming back this next session, but it was just something that wasn't specifically asked for that we thought was worthy of effort.
It's of interest that in my quick reading of this, Mr. Bender's letter, he doesn't quote the state statute. I'm not sure, and we don't have a copy of it. I don't know. Is that getting an over our heads? But I think it's a critical issue.
I can provide you with the information I received from Senior and Long-Term Care Division. That is the audit. The first page, I didn't bring
Does that
copies.
include
This
the law?
is the Montana administrative rules. The way that the statutes are incorporated into practice.
So addressing that issue, Craig, under the rulemaking authority, was the 78 cents directly, was it specifically mentioned in the rulemaking authority?
It was mentioned there are rules in there talking about who, if resources are limited, who gets them first. It's supposed to be certified nursing assistants, followed by LPNs, followed by RNs. It talks about the 75 cents plus the 25 cents of benefit. If the cost of the institution is not 25 cents, then the full dollar should be used to elevate wages.
Another question, follow-up question on that. So now this went through the rulemaking process, and it was noticed and all the above things. So it really went through the rulemaking process. So rules normally, when we aren't in session, become laws. Okay? Is that your understanding, and Frank, your understanding as well?
If a rule, it would be my understanding that if a rule has been noticed, publication that it's up for comment,
Noticed and...
noticed and had a hearing on it, usually would be a hearing on a rule.
Right.
And then if it was adopted as official rule, then
It has...
it has the force of law, must be followed.
Right.
In this case...
go ahead.
Well, in this case, I haven't looked at the administrative rule, but the way you described it, it's an add-on payment, not to supplant or replace. That's a standard kind of thing. If a program is going to give the city of Missoula $1 million to do child care, there's always a condition in there that Missoula is going to maintain its current level of activity, not just take the $1 million from the state and say, now we're using the state's $1 million. We don't have to spend what we say maintain the level of effort. And so that's the way you describe the rule, and I would think that would be the natural way to describe the legislation as well. Add on to what's there. Don't supplant any wages that were already being paid. Add on $1 in some mix of salary and benefits, but not to have a formula that looks like subtraction and addition to come up to zero.
And that's why legislators normally don't like the rulemaking process, because if they don't attend the hearing, sometimes they get put in their bills things they don't necessarily want. But, and I don't think this is the case, from my understanding there. But my understanding has always been you live with it if it goes through the rulemaking process, and then you go back and you change it, because it has the same effect as the law. Now, whether we need to research that to make sure that's what's occurred here, and they are in violation, but they could look at it, and they could begin 75 cents, and they can't go any further, and they may be giving them just the best facts that fit the criteria there, and maybe when we go back, we need to set a different criteria up, and then look at it that way, rather than, if it's this rulemaking authority has been given and it's actually the law. So it may be that it's more solid than I had thought before the discussion.
I think another, maybe I've said this already, but the intent was to have it revenue neutral for the institutions. And it seems to me that there are contracted step increases in the union contract, and if you play that out forward in time, and it seems like it's not revenue neutral for the institution in their interpretation.
Is this, would this sheet have the rule of law? I mean, would it be law now?
I think the administrative rule, that part there.
Not as clear.
Well, this says add-on.
Yeah.
So the Division of Senior and Long-Term Care must have a lawyer. And could they say to the nursing home, says it was an add-on, not meant to, you had to do whatever you want with your contract, but this is an add-on, not meant to replace or take the place of existing contract.
And, I specifically asked that question, and it comes back to the response. We can't examine each contract and each payment methodology, and I have a different understanding. I think it's not an add-on as is being implemented.
Right, but
If
they are in violation of this law, then I would think it is in their interest. The contract isn't in their interest, but if the accusation is this was in fact used to replace the existing contract and the 75 cents was never given, thus the nursing home is pocketing 35 of those cents, or 38 of those cents, or 32 of those cents, whatever the math is, then I would think that is of interest to the state.
Yes.
Well, I would agree with that part of it. We have to be able to come up with the facts. But the issue that it comes out, where she showed us on the April 27th, where it comes out neutral, the 43 and the 35, or whatever, minus 43, 3508, that makes it look revenue neutral, but it doesn't say where the 78 cents really goes. So that would answer to the revenue neutral. I remember giving them some, meaning the nursing home industry, some additional money for doing certain improvements in the facility, and I cannot tell you the gerrymandering or the handling of that particular money. That was early in my career, but I can't tell you what they did with that particular monies to do things, and it's a terrible thought process, or a terrible thing to think about, but there's not. I'm just not comfortable with what goes on in nursing home financing. I'm sorry. Thank you.
This audit, if I could ask one more question about that audit, I don't know if you have to leave, but have you actually had a chance to take a look at that audit document to see what?
I finally got it this actually this afternoon. It was going to be sent to me, and but I read it. I've looked over it. I wouldn't want to take a test on it. But it's there. Folks, maybe you with your department experience are more familiar looking at those things, but that's the specific document.
But is that audit, direct audit of Hillside Manor? That's what it is?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
For the institution, there are also, in the administrative rules, reporting requirements, I guess, to document and encourage compliance with the legislation.
Well, thank you very much
Thanks.
for your testimony.
Pleasure.
We have some additional persons who would like to testify now? Thank you.
We're just going to check in. I might not have
Hi, I'm Dave Kendall, resident of Missoula. I work on healthcare policy for a national organization, the Progressive Policy Institute, which is based in Washington, D.C. And I also work on state issues from time to time, Montana state issues. And my interest in coming here tonight is to sort of address the fact that you're having a discussion about a wage dispute at one level, but at another level, there's a big policy implication for what you're discussing. The reason is that what we, as a society, have decided we're not going to let people die in the streets. We're not going to let people have an end of life where there's no one to care for them, or when they have a long-term disability, that we're going to find some housing for them, and not let them lose their house and their livelihood. And as a society, we've decided to do this, and so that we have a Medicaid program, which was enacted in 1965, and so there's a public interest in the way in which the affairs of a nursing home are conducted. There's another reason that we have to sort of be aware of this from a public point of view, and that's the residents themselves of nursing homes are very vulnerable. They can't speak for themselves, and so as a group of society, we have an obligation to our fellow citizens to speak for them, to make sure that they're taken care of. And what I want to just present tonight is all a matter of public record or public research, and I'd be happy to sort of share my sources with you. As I go through this, I will tell you where I got the information from. But essentially, there's a lot of information that we have about, and knowledge we have about nursing homes and how they operate. We know that, for instance, like in most businesses, higher wages increase job retention. So people stay longer when they're paid better. It also is a factor in how well care is provided for in a nursing home. As you can imagine, somebody who's new to a facility is going to be less likely to know how to handle all the difficult situations that direct caregivers have and are confronted with in a nursing home. So all this is very relevant to public policy, and we have a number of ways of protecting our residents in terms of both the kind of audits you've already heard about, but we also have a public reporting system for quality indicators. So this is a system that's a set of information that's compiled by the federal government under the Medicare program to help both individuals as well as communities assess the quality of care that's being delivered in an institution. So I want to just kind of go through that briefly and just give you some information about Hillside. It's not necessarily directly related to wages, but because there's a lot of factors involved in the quality of care in a given nursing home. But it certainly is a part. Wages are a part of the quality of care that's being provided in a nursing home. And so, and anyone on the can go into the website medicare.gov and look at nursing home compare and find the same information. In the case of Hillside Nursing Home, some of the categories of basically two kinds of quality indicators. There are measures of the quality of care that's being delivered, and then there are reports about results of the inspections that are made about every year. On the quality measures, which measures things like whether nursing home residents are given a pneumonia vaccine, for instance, just an important thing to keep people alive, basic stuff. We're now measuring that, making sure that that people are getting that's kind of good kind of care. On indications like that, Hillside is very much in line with the national average. And in some areas it is better than the national average and better than the state average. For instance, there are long-stay residents who need help with daily activities is not getting worse. In other words, they're not seeing a deterioration in the quality of the quality of lives of the people who are in the nursing homes. At the same time, the percent of residents who have to spend most of their time in a bed or a chair is much higher than it is on the national average. About 10% of Hillside Manor's residents have to spend most of the time in a chair or bed, compared to 3% nationally. Another notable difference from the norm is that and this in a good way, the percent of residents who are actually getting those pneumonia vaccines is higher than the national and state averages. So from those quality measures, you wouldn't say anything that's too alarming about Hillside, but when you look at the results of the inspections, that's a slightly different picture. For about a little over a year period, ending in September 30th in 2006, the Hillside had 17 cited health deficiencies, whereas the average number in the state of Montana is 7. According to the General Accountability Office in Washington, D.C., about 40% of the time these reports of problems are actually underreported. So this is probably a lower than average number. So the kinds of things that are being cited for this nursing home they're graded on a scale of 1 to 4. 1 being no harm, very little harm, and 4 being seriously harmed. Most of the sites here are in the 1s and 2s, so they're not super serious problems. But a 2 means either minimal harm or potential for actual harm. So these are kind of warning signs you would see. You wouldn't want to see a lot of this in a nursing home. And one of the areas that they're cited here for is failing to develop a complete care plan for residents who are just joining being admitted to the nursing home, and preparing a care team plan that includes all the caretakers. Another area that they've had some problems with is making sure that the residents are well nourished, and also storing and keeping a good, safe food storage and cooking processes. And then finally, they're cited as not providing, as having a problem with providing drugs and related services to each resident. I'd be happy to share this with you. I didn't bring copies, though, but I'll kind of pass this around. So that gives you an idea of basically of what one of the tools that we have is from the public policy point of view of getting some information here. The last thing I wanted to add was that the research shows that a successful nursing home is one that supports its caretakers so that the caretakers can take care of the residents. And that's very important because in addition to low pay, nursing home workers face high burnout. It's hard work taking care of people. And so the support that the nursing home workers need is from their administration in terms of making sure their needs are being taken care of. And I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks.
I have a question. I'm somewhat familiar with Nursing Home Compare and the Medicare.gov. We didn't have I haven't had a chance to look at that audit, but the kind of inspections that are done by whom? So that this data that's put into the database for comparing Hillside versus other qualities, who does those inspections?
I believe that's a government function, so you have a state, and Carolyn, other people may know this better than I am, but I believe it's generally state employees, is that what it is, or?
I think state employees do come in and do inspections, because I had introduced a bill way back when I started out with what we called unannounced nursing home inspections. And nursing homes had fought that for a long period of time. In 87, 89, I got a small bit and piece in there. I didn't get the whole tamale or whatever you want to say in there, but it allowed for people to have nursing homes to be uninspected, because if you know about an inspection and you put all the things in the right places. So therefore, curtains are pulled down over laundry, food is refrigerated in the appropriate manner. The commode chair is so many inches or feet away from the person, all these kinds of things. All the criteria is met when the JCH or whoever is going to come in and inspect. But it's my understanding, and that again is in the Department of Health and Human Services. So they can have a national accrediting. Hospitals have JCHO, I think JACO, whatever it was, JCH when I was working, and that was based out of Chicago, and that was the Cadillac title that you got, or certificate you got. And that was good for 3 years if you got that, so you didn't have to have an inspection. So I'm not sure in the nursing home industry, but I'm sure that we do some of these. But there's so many of those, and so many nursing homes in different sizes and shapes and forms now. Assisted living, full-blown nursing homes, intermediate care, 2 and 4 and 6, and so I'm not so sure how often individuals actually get to facilities to actually make the checks anymore in regards to that. I haven't had the privilege of knowing that information in this time since I've been in the Senate.
Are there any other questions of Dave Kendall?
Well, I was just going to ask Dave about, the number was high in what area? It was above, was it out of bed and in chair?
Yeah, right, that was one area, right.
So to me, that would mean they're more severe, or, let me ask you, would that mean to you more severe individuals, more ill individuals, or would it indicate to you that there may not be enough staff with which to get the individual up and about and moving?
It could be either one. These are these particular set of information are not not what we call case mix adjusted. So, but no, they're and that's why that's a very good point. And
individuals going to nursing homes these days are much sicker than what they were initially when I started in the profession. And but yet, if you don't have enough staff, they're spending a lot more time in bed. So.
Right. Exactly.
I have a quick question for Dave. Do you know what the average cost of a nursing home month-long stay is? I'm curious about that.
The numbers I can recall from several years ago were it's somewhere. The annual numbers are somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 on the national average. So that's the annual year, right? Right. It's not a small amount of money.
You have to get it jobbed.
And this is why a lot of people have to rely on Medicaid, because they spend down their assets once they enter a nursing home, and then they end up poor, so they have therefore qualify for Medicaid.
I presume what you're suggesting is it's a highly profitable industry.
I don't know if that's what I would call it. I mean, I don't think it's not I think it's probably a very difficult industry to manage, in all honesty, because you basically, since so much of your income is coming from the government, and those are fixed and largely in law, you don't have, the typical sort of creative entrepreneurial activity that you see in the rest of the marketplace. If you come up with a better product, you can charge more, or you can, beat the competition. It's not the same kind of market. At the same time, we are seeing in the nursing home industry, the sort of long-term care industry in general, a lot of innovation for things that are not just nursing homes. You're seeing, as Carolyn was mentioning, it's a very diverse industry now. You have assisted care living, you have specialty care facilities for people with Alzheimer's. There's a lot. Medicaid may be the biggest payer, but the second biggest payer for long-term care services is out-of-pocket costs. So there is some private choice. So it's not, there's not. It's hard. I wouldn't say it's a highly profitable business. I don't say there's a lot of people. People aren't losing their shirt necessarily either. But be that as it may, it's maybe something in between. And most of the. I would also add that most of the nursing homes in the country are nonprofit organizations. They're run by nonprofit organizations. In many cases, they're operated by religious institutions like various.
Do you know what Hillside Manor is?
The Hillside Manor is a for-profit institution.
And in your work as an analyst, have you noticed any trends of for-profit private nursing homes opening or closing? I mean, I would think that if they are not profitable, they would close in a trend. And if they are, moderately profitable, they would be stable in numbers.
Yeah, I honestly haven't looked at those numbers in any detail. I haven't noticed anything that would strike me as haven't heard, any analysis that says, geez, we have this, huge problem in terms of a large number of nursing homes dropping off. But it is a chronic problem. One of the reasons that the legislature did what it did in terms of increasing salaries, I think, is partly because there are low profit margins here. It is tough, to run this business. So that but I don't see a wholesale departure. I think we would know, if all our nursing homes are closing, the portion that were operated by, and it is. So we would know there's a problem. And secondly, it's not as if the nonprofits don't have to worry about. So-called profit. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from a nun who ran the Sisters of Charity Hospital. He says, "Well, no mission, no margin." I got the reverse. No margin, no mission. Right? So you have to. Everyone has to keep a little. You can't be losing money on this sort of thing. So.
One of the big things that's occurring is that nursing homes are moving into corporations. And one may be doing well in Chicago. For instance, say Hillside was here. Chicago may be doing great, able to pick up the slack or loss here, in this particular facility. Just like Sage Corporation had been involved here when Janet was involved in the nursing home. They were taking all the money out of state. And people were... who are private pays, and that's a very interesting thing, because if you're private pay people, then the nursing home industry will come to the legislature and say, you must compensate us for the rate of the private pay individual or. And so it becomes this tug of war between private pay And in my mind, and David may have a different one, and it may be entirely different, but I mean, it was just a constant tug of war between the private pay and the people that were paid for on the state. And I mean, you got 28 days, I think it was, when you were first admitted under Medicare, where there wasn't really a charge. I mean, there was a charge to your Medicare, which we all pay for, but then pretty soon there was a moving down, and you might have been in a private room at that time if, you were lucky. But if you moved out of the 28th to 29th day, you were either in a ward or a two-person room in comparison to. So there was a certain stigma that involved in this process. So, but if you could afford, a few extra bucks, you could have the privilege of having that private room. So there is a status thing within this particular system, which is not cool.
I think that's still largely
Is
an
it
issue.
gone?
It hasn't gone.
Okay. I'm not that old, thank you.
I understand the concept that you've been putting forth about stabilizing a work population by not having wages so low that they need to move somewhere else just to survive. And testimony we heard earlier was that 50% of the workers at Hillside are receiving some sort of public assistance from temporary assistance to needy families, or TANF. Apart from that issue, though, it seems that the one issue is whether or not an organization like this, we don't have any testimony from someone from Hillside Manor here at the moment, at least, but that whether they're profit or non-profit, they still have the obligation to follow the contract, and that they can't find ways of maneuvering so that they make only the minimal kinds of things. I mean, the Nursing Home Compare does not cite a whole set of high risks that are there. I'm not sure what amount of nursing homes actually have these high risks, but in this case, they seem to be doing a pretty good job, except for some of the indicators. There are a lot of twos. Two is
Right. I mean, I think
possibility.
the important thing, the sort of the big fact is that they have a much higher than average number of sites overall, in terms of inspections. And then within those sites, they're not. I wouldn't hit the panic button, sort of kind of indications. But there are sort of early warning sign kind of indications that maybe something that is not as, could be operating better, clearly. Right, that's how to characterize it.
Any other questions of Dave Kendall? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Do we have some additional persons who would like to testify? Or someone who has testified earlier who would like to add something to what they did testify?
I know you guys were talking about who does inspect the nursing homes, and that is the State Department of Public Health and Human Services. And they do have the state auditors, they have like state inspectors that come, and it's just, they have like sets of inspectors that, for nursing homes and hospitals and stuff. They have inspectors for restaurants and the food service business and stuff, and they come at least once a year. And back when I first started, you really didn't know when they were coming. You know the inspectors come at least once a year, but not exactly when. You could have averaged it out within a 3 to 4 month period. Now the facilities pretty much have it pinpointed. They know when the inspectors are coming. We know when the inspectors are coming because, boy, we have extra staff on the floor. And all these other people are helping us out on our job. The minute state leaves, we're down to the bare minimums, you know. It's really sad for our residents, you know, and, you know, on that side, it's, you know, not good for our residents. We ourselves, being short-staffed, run the risk of work-related injuries more. I have, as a shop steward, I have talked to numerous people leaving Hillside and going to work elsewhere and just asking them a few questions. Why are you leaving? You know, don't you like working here? What are your reasons? And a lot of the majority is because I found a better paying job. I've got a family to support, you know, and I know I've stayed there, and that is my choice to stay there. I really enjoy working with the residents. And a lot of the newer people, they come, they get certified. We do offer a certification program. And they're getting that certification so they can get a higher paying job elsewhere. You know, that's kind of working the system, but, you know, that's kind of the way it runs in the industry. So we work with our union to try to get our wages raised, and then we go, you know, then something like this happens. And it really angers a lot of the workers and stuff, because we know the work we put in. You know, we know what we do caring for the elderly, and it's really frustrating, and it's just maddening to a lot of us. We do have CNAs that have worked at Hillside up to close to 30 years. They have been at Hillside for 30 years, and they enjoy working with the elderly and that too. And that's, you know, I started back when they were, you know, like halfway through their careers, you know, and it's just like, you just really get, you know, involved in the residents. You try to do, because you just have this good feeling inside of you working with them and stuff. And on the other hand, we do have our own families that we need to support and raise. You know, I have one daughter at home, and I have raised 2 other children, and they have gone on to college and stuff, and that, and I'm back down getting the other one through. So we're really asking for your guys' support, and I really appreciate all of you coming, and thank all of you for coming.
I just have one clarification question that sort of takes us back to the contract. It's my understanding that there are some people in the union that are not direct care workers. Is that true? I mean, it looks like on
Yeah.
here that personal care attendants got 35-cent raise that was in the contract.
Right. You're speaking of in our bargaining unit, we have CNAs in the building. We have dietary aides and cooks. We also have housekeeping staff, and we have laundry staff. Now, without that support staff with us and backing us up and supporting us, we would have even a harder time getting our job done. So we look at it as they're basically part of the direct caregivers, not directly patient, you know, worker with resident, but they do supplies with clean bedding, clean clothes, you know, linen, food and drinks. So yeah, you know, they're a big part of our union.
Thank you.
I have a question. When did that arbitration process start that you mentioned before?
Just I don't remember the date. Yeah, because we filed a grievance, and we went through and we did little things with the union. We had call-ins, we mailed out postcards in support of us. We had sent out press releases, we had the rally, and and they just kept telling us the same thing. No, you got your raise, you got your raise. So then we went ahead and filed a grievance and are going through the arbitration steps now.
Do you have any idea how long that arbitration process is supposed to take?
Hopefully not long. We don't really have an idea. It could last, anywhere from 3 months to a year probably. We're hoping not that long.
So I just have one thing to say and add, and I had the honor of working with Carrie. We started at Hillside at around the same time, but the thing that is absolutely tragic and heartbreaking about this is that everything that's here was there when we were working there in 89 and 90 and 91. They have the ability to change things. It's back then we were asking and fighting for wages, and that was at $3.90 an hour. A business that wants to work, in our town, it's people need to be able to live. You shouldn't work 40 hours a week and still qualify for public assistance. That's just wrong. That's very true.
Do you have any idea of how many workers are likely to leave if the 35-cent, if the actual wage rate is not paid? So they're waiting temporarily until there's some resolution of this through the arbitration or through some other action?
We have already had CNAs leave the facility for higher paying jobs.
Mm-hmm.
This past week we've had 3 workers leave just in 1 week for higher paying jobs.
Can we withdraw? I'm gonna have to leave pretty soon.
Yeah. Is there any other testimony that someone wants to present? Okay. And what we'll do is to call a respite for this hearing, and the board will convene to discuss what we've heard. And as I said at the beginning of the process, we will see if we can come to a consensus on some recommendations for actions that we support, we think should be taken concerning the testimony we've heard. I want to reiterate, too, that we did invite nursing home administrator to send anyone who wanted to, and we haven't received any testimony on behalf of the nursing home tonight. So let's take a break so that the board can actually discuss this together. Thank you very much. The Montana Workers' Rights Board has reviewed the testimony presented this evening, December 6, 2006, concerning the dispute between the United Healthcare Workers Local 427 and Hillside Manor. We want to report that we deliberated, and we want to say that the Montana Workers' Rights Board acknowledges that the Hillside Manor Nursing Home has complied with the 2005 legislation by paying the add-on funds that were provided by the state of Montana to their employees, as demonstrated by the senior long-term care audits that we reviewed. However, this same audit clearly demonstrates that the Hillside Manor Nursing Home has not complied with the contract with United Healthcare Workers Local 427, which clearly calls for a wage increase apart from the state add-on funds. Therefore, the Workers' Rights Board recommends that Hillside Manor Nursing Home comply with the contract with the union and pay the required wage increases called for by the contract as originally negotiated.